every sport has certain high pressure situations, some more than others, but especially soccer, there's a ton of different high pressure situations that I could think of off the top of my head. And for a lot of people, those are stressful situations. It can be even, give you anxiety, especially if it's kind of those solo moments, right? If you're a goalkeeper, if you're the person trying to score the game winning penalty kick for your team. But for you in those high pressure situations, how did you handle that? And were there any things that, you use tactics to better prepare yourself going into that?
My final school, Missouri Baptist University, I was the set piece taker. So in soccer, you have free kicks, corners, penalties. I didn't take the penalties, the striker took those. But in terms of free kicks were close to the 18-yard area, so where you could actually have a decent shot from, I was on all of those, and corners as well. That's obviously a good opportunity to create some chances for your team. So being in charge of those is, like you mentioned, as almost another level of responsibility, and that puts a bit of pressure on you in those situations. I remember there was in my first year at Mobap, my parents had come over and we got a free kick in a really good position just before half time, and I spent hours. I think one factor of preparing for those things is practice and commitment. So I spent hours on these, but at the end of the day, it doesn't always work out. And I remember taking one whilst my parents were there, and I just skied it. It just went through the American football goals, and I felt pure embarrassment. But it wasn't because my teammates had seen it. It was because my parents had come all the way over, and I'd been talking about probably for years to my dad about how I've been practicing these. So that was the worst one that I can remember. But then from then on in, I was like, well, like it really doesn't matter. Like if I've missed that one, but you stick at it, and especially in my last season, I scored some decisive goals from set pieces, and being able to deal with the pressure by having, for me, it was almost a routine thing. So that's coming with the commitment, with the practice. You set those habits for example, taking a penalty kick, you would always do the same run up or something. Or I'm trying to think, well, pretty much any other sport, there's always loads of different habits that you can chain together that will just, if you practice it enough, become like natural. So I think commitment is certainly part of dealing with pressure. Another one for me is standards and holding yourself to a certain standard, being proud of what you are and how you're representing the team. That's something that when I look back, especially on my last semester, I was the captain for the side, and I really took it upon myself to be like, right, okay, I need to set the correct standard and represent the school properly. So as long as you can walk away from the game or from the field or whatever's happened and look back and go, right, I acted in the correct way, and hold yourself to those standards, I think that's really important. And that even rolls into what we're talking about, the pressure side of it. If you hold yourself to the standard of how you're performing, and know that you've given it your all, then as much as pressure is very real, I think if you can look back and be proud of how you performed, then that sort of settles your mind a little bit. Not that there aren't those plays within the game that I thought about at night, going, oh, why have I made that pass, or how did I not do this or that? But yeah, I think on a whole, if you can look back and be proud of your own performance, then that sort of rolls into confidence, and then that rolls into dealing with pressure.
Kind of like changing the topic a little bit. What legacy or impact, if you could leave any, would you leave behind for a current or future student athlete?
I think that goes back to what I was touching on there with standards. I think the way in which you conduct yourself, whether that's on the field, in practice, in the weights room. When I was talking to the team about these things, in the role of captain, it's like, for me, there are these basics. That is the bare minimum that everybody should be meeting. So like time management, or even like not even sport related, like picking up your litter, like not just keeping the place a mess. Like all these little things, these little 1%, they all add up. So I think for me, especially in that last year, not necessarily the word legacy for me, because I feel like legacy, I don't know, that feels like I've got to be Muhammad Ali or something, like somebody really impressive to properly leave a legacy. But I was definitely thinking, right, I need to make sure that I'm acting in a way that current teammates and future teammates can look up to and look to emulate. So that's what I'd like to think I left behind was a good role model, I suppose, for how to act on and off the field.
Bringing you back a little bit now, this is probably when you're in high school, still overseas at this moment. If you could go back knowing everything you know right now, current time, what advice would you give your younger self to either better prepare yourself for the college experience as a student athlete, or anything that you would just kind of like to have known in advance?
For me, it's 100%. I wish, like, if I could go back in time, I wish that I'd educated myself better on the college soccer setup in terms of the organizations, the fact that, you know, Division One, Division Two, NAIA, there are schools that are comparable in terms of the level. When I first came out, it was in my brain, it was D1 or bust. And I received very good Division Two offers looking back. But because I was sort of naive, also coming from the UK, there's like we're the football, you know, side of the world. America is going to be a breeze. So there's a lot of naivety around that, and I was definitely caught up in it and thought D1 is going to be the only level that will be good enough for me. So I certainly wish I knew more and understood that there are very good schools at all the levels, whether that's D1, D2, NAIA, junior college. It even is a very, you know, accessible and can be a great route for players who have maybe tighter budgets or need to work on their academics. So yeah, for me, it's the understanding. I wish I had understood it more, and it's hard because that would have resulted in me not necessarily being in this situation right now, but certainly for the future generations, that's what I want to change. I've actually started my own website called US College Soccer, and that is the entire goal of that is to provide my experience and explain these things that international students don't necessarily. I think the US students understand it because you go through high school, you understand more so about how the organizations work. But for international students, it's really, there's so much information, and to even get your head around NCAA, NAIA, like all these different acronyms, NJCAA, like it's like, what is going on? It's just too much. So really trying to lay that out. That's the goal of that website. But yeah, education is something that I wish I could go back and change for myself.
Switching to like a more positive note, if you could choose like one or two of your favorite memories as like a student athlete to look back at, what would those be and like why?
I'll do one that's sort of on the field and one that's off the field. The one that's on the field is very much tied to what I've already touched on. It was this last semester. It was in the fall. We were playing in Florida. That was on its own an amazing experience because, you know, you're flying with the team. That's the first time I've done that throughout my college career, to a state that I'd never been to. So all of that is amazing on its own. And then we were playing a side that were ranked fourth in the nation. And we went into the game as underdogs. We were tying 1-1, and there was about 3 minutes left. We got a set piece and we got a free kick. And I took the free kick and scored. And honestly, that feeling was just like all of those hours of practice have paid off. That was 100% one of my favorite memories throughout my collegiate career. The bad side of it was I was looking at the scoreboard going, there's 2 minutes, 30 seconds, like we've done it. Lo and behold, 16 seconds before the buzzer goes, they scored an equalizer. So it was a bit deflating, but that's still one of my favorite memories. And then off the field, the relationships that I've built, the friendships that I've made are a highlight for me, because I've met people from all over the world. I myself, of course, not from America, but I've met, you know, loads of great Americans that I now call really good friends. And then not just Americans, but also people from all over the globe. So that has been amazing for me, and something that if I'd gone the traditional route of just staying at university in the UK, I wouldn't have had anywhere near the same experience. So yeah, those connections, relationships, and friendships that I've built are a really positive part of the experience I've had.
Kind of transitioning now and talking a little bit more about technology. I know technology in our generation is ever growing. It's something, right, where now we have the whole integration of AI, and it seems like technology is almost starting to take over in a sense. But how do you foresee technology kind of shaping, the mental health and sports performance journey for a lot of these athletes, just in regards to, hey, could colleges provide something like that in regards to the FST journey that we're working towards? Really just like to hear your thoughts from a perspective of someone, again, being from that younger generation and more in tune with what technology has to offer, as well as on top of that too, do you think that there's any downsides to technology as well?
Yeah, so like you've mentioned, our generation's pretty in tune with technology. We've, grown up with it. That's part of the reason that I started a YouTube channel, is because I love watching YouTube when I was younger. And growing up with all of that stuff, I was always interested in, the latest technology, especially when it came to performance and the sports side of it. Even, for example, the things in the treatment room nowadays, like you can get the compression boots and all these sort of different pieces of technology that enable you as an athlete to gain those 1% that we mentioned earlier. And I think 100% with the FST that you're talking about, how having that available to athletes, it just adds another one of those little things that complete the athlete and enable them to unlock another side of themselves. I think, as I mentioned before, when I was in a bit of a mental struggle, there really was nothing there. There was nobody other than those support pillars that I was fortunate to have. There was nothing else to really rely on, and no professional, advice to go to. As much as I love all of those people that I mentioned earlier, none of them are professionals in the field of anything even close to psychology. So having a resource to look to and find that side of things is really important. And not only for, if you're having struggles with your mental health or just somebody to talk to, but also for me, another intriguing side of it is that sport performance side. And for example, like visualization and these other aspects that, despite not necessarily training or practicing those on the field, something that you can do away from it that will benefit your game. And I think that's going to only grow bigger and progress more as, like you said, technology develops, because anything that enables an athlete to get an extra 1% whilst not taking a physical toll on their body is going to be massive. So yeah, I wish we had something that was available to us that offered those resources.
Kind of wrapping this up and wrapping up our talk, I know you kind of touched on it earlier regarding advice you'd give yourself before coming over to be a student athlete in America.
Mhm.
What could you give as a piece of encouragement or wisdom to the listeners listening right now that are currently in the midst of their student athlete journey?
When I was going through that roller coaster ride and the lowest point of my collegiate career, once I bounced back from it, I realized that what really mattered was my passion for the game, or as I like to call it, the love of the game. And that has really been a driving factor for me since that point, and something that I will echo to anybody that unfortunately has to listen to me yapping to them. But I really think it's so important, because if you strip it back, as I was stripped back in that scenario, the bare bones of it is, if you don't enjoy something, then it's not sustainable. So if you're not doing the sport because you love the sport, then I think potentially you need to rethink it. But for a lot of us, the reason that we got into the sport in the first place was we were kids and we loved playing the game, and it's just snowballed from there. So I think always remember that you're doing it because you love the sport, and there are going to be things that get in the way of that, but at the end of the day, it's your love of the game that will keep you going. And that's something that you can always rely upon to be there.
Really, really love that you brought that up. And we're able to wrap it up on such a great note there. But again, can't thank you enough, Jack, for your time today. It was great for myself and Russ, everybody also listening in, to just learn more about yourself, learn about your journey as a student athlete, and just share a little bit more about some of the things that you instilled within your time during college as well. But off of that, we're going to link all of Jack's social medias that he wants you guys to go check out. Again, he's got a ton of great stuff out there, especially the YouTube channel, guys. Go check it out, especially if you're in soccer. Don't even have to be in soccer. You just love watching sports content in general. But make sure go follow all of his platforms down below. And other than that, man, really do appreciate you. And we'll catch you guys on the next episode next week.